Medieval India, page number 49, the era of Balban. The struggle between the monarchy and the Turkish chiefs continued till one of the Turkish chiefs, Ulugh Khan, known in history by his later title of Balban, gradually arrogated all power to himself and finally ascended the throne in 1265. During the earlier period, Balban held the position of Naib or deputy to Nasiruddin Mahmud, a younger son of Iltutmish, whom Balban had helped in securing the throne in 1246. Balban further strengthened his position by marrying one of his daughters to the young Sultan. The growing authority of Balban alienated many of the Turkish chiefs who had hoped to continue their former power and influence in the affairs of government. Since Nasiruddin Mahmud was young and inexperienced, they therefore hatched a conspiracy in 1250 and ousted Balban from his position. Balban was replaced by Imaduddin Raihan, who was an Indian Muslim. Although the Turkish chiefs wanted that all the power and authority should remain in the hands of Turkish chiefs, they consented to the appointment of Raihan because they could not agree among themselves which one of them should succeed to Balban's post. Balban agreed to step aside but carefully continued to build his own group. Within 1.5 years of his dismissal, he managed to win over some of his opponents. Balban now made preparations for a military showdown. It seems that he had also established some contacts with Mongols who had overrun a large part of Punjab. Sultan Mahmud bowed to the superior strength of Balban's group, and dismissed Rehan. After some time, Rehan was defeated and killed. Balban got rid of many of his other rivals by fair and foul means. He even went so far as to assume the royal insignia, the Chhatra, but he did not assume the throne himself, probably due to sentiments of the Turkish chiefs. In 1265, Sultan Mahmud died. Some historians of the opinion that Balban poisoned the young king and did away with his sons in order to clear his way to the throne. Balban's methods were often undesirable, but there is no doubt that with his accession to the throne there began an era of strong centralized government. Balban constantly sought to increase the prestige and power of the monarchy because he was conceived that was the only way to face the internal and external dangers facing him. It was an age in which authority and power was supposed to be the privilege of those born in noble houses and those who could boast of an ancient pedigree. Hence, Balban tried to strengthen his claim to the throne by declaring that he was the descendant of the legendary Iranian king Afrasiab. In order to prove his claim to noble blood, Balban stood forth as the champion of the Turkish nobility. He refused to entertain important government posts anyone who did not belong to the noble family. This virtually meant the exclusion of Indian Muslims from all positions of power and authority. He sometimes went to ridiculous lengths. For instance, he refused to grant audience to an important trader because he was not highborn. The historian Barani, who was himself a great champion of Turkish nobles, put the following words in Balban's mouth: "Whenever I see a base-born, ignoble man, my eyes burn and I reach in anger for my sword to kill him." We do not know if Balban actually said these words, but they show his attitude towards the non-Turks. While claiming to act as a champion of the Turkish nobility, Balban was not prepared to share power with anyone, not even with members of his own family. His despotism was such that he was not prepared to hear any criticism, even from his own supporters. Balban was determined to finally break the power of Chahalgani, that is, the Turkish nobles, and to exalt the power and prestige of the monarchy. He did not hesitate even to poison his cousin Sher Khan to avoid this objective. At the same time, in order to win the confidence of the public, he administered justice with extreme impartiality. Not even the highest in the land were to be spared if they transgressed his authority. Thus, the father of the governor of Badon, as also the father of the governor of Awadh, were given exemplary punishment for cruelty to their personal slaves. To keep himself well informed, Balban appointed spies in every department. He also organized a strong centralized army both to deal with internal disturbances and to repel the Mongols, who had entrenched themselves in the Punjab and posed a serious danger to Delhi Sultanate. For the purpose, he recognized the military department, Diwan-e-Arz, and pensioned off those soldiers and troopers who were no longer fit for service. Since many of the troopers were Turks who had come to India in the time of Iltutmish, they raised a hue and cry against this decision, but Balban was not moved. The law and order situation in the area around Delhi and the Doab had deteriorated. In the Ganga Jamuna Doab and Awadh, the roads were poor and were infested with robbers and dacoits. So much so that the communication with the eastern areas had become difficult. Some of the Rajput zamindars had set up forts in the area and defied the government. The Mewatis had become so bold as to plunder people up to the outskirts of Delhi. To deal with these elements, Balban adopted a policy of blood and iron. Robbers were mercilessly pursued and put to death. In the areas around Badayun, Rajput strongholds were destroyed and the jungles were cut down, and colonies of Afghan soldiers were settled there to safeguard the roads and to deal with the Rajput zamindars whenever they raised a disturbance against the government. By these harsh methods, Balban controlled the situation. In order to impress the people with the strength and awe of his government, Balban maintained a magnificent court. Whenever he went out, he was surrounded by a large force of bodyguards with drawn swords. He refused to laugh and joke in the court and even gave up drinking wine so that no one may see him in a non-serious mood. To emphasize that the nobles were not his equals, he insisted on the ceremony of sajda, sijada, and paibos, prostration and kissing the monarch's feet. These and many other ceremonies which he copied were Iranian in origin and were considered un-Islamic. However, little objection could be raised because at the time when the most Muslim states of Central and West Asia had disappeared in the face of Mongol onslaught, Balban and the Sultanate of Delhi stood out amongst almost alone as the champions of Islam. Balban died in 1286. He was undoubtedly one of the main architects of the Sultanate of Delhi, particularly of its form of government and institutions. By asserting the power of monarchy, Balban strengthened the Delhi Sultanate. But even he could not fully defend northern India against the inroads of the Mongols. Moreover, by excluding non-Turks from the position of power and authority by trying to base the government on a very narrow group, he made many people dissatisfied. This led to a fresh disturbances and troubles after his death. Thank you everyone for tuning in. In the next part, we'll start with the Mongols and the problem of northwest frontier. This is on page number 51 of Medieval India, and we'll continue this with the next part in the video. Thank you for tuning in. All the best for exams, and do share and subscribe the channel for more videos like this. Thank you.